So, hello people, it's Serge again. I'm going to continue my lectures on teaching English, and today I'm going to share a few ideas of mine with you on the topic of teaching vocabulary. So, we don't have to come up with a definition of what vocabulary is. It's words, phrases, collocations, idioms, all those bricks, linguistic bricks in the language that have meaning and that we can use to express our ideas, to express our thoughts and everything. And my personal attitude to teaching vocabulary is I can't say I like it. Okay, I love teaching grammar more than I like teaching vocabulary. There are lots of reasons for that. Because it's much harder. It's much harder. Teaching grammar is about discipline. And I just have to discipline my students to make sure that they're thinking in the right way, not to make sure they don't make mistakes. And with teaching vocabulary, it's a matter of taste, really. Because my goal is that they should use the vocabulary, use what they have learned, and it's hard. Very often, it's so hard to make them use. They will know, but they won't be using the things that they've learned, because it's a matter of taste. So it's just that they are used to speaking English using certain words, and these synonyms that I provide them with, they just don't. They're not to their liking. They don't feel the need to use, and for them to start using the things that they're learning, they have to change lots of things in their head. Just change the way of thinking, change mentality, change their taste, because you have to have pleasure from expressing yourself in a certain way, using this way. For example, rather than say "I think it is," you should enjoy saying "I find it interesting, I find it exciting," and so on and so forth. It is a matter of taste, and it's hard. It's hard to make sure that students have that taste, that they feel the difference, that they enjoy this difference, and they feel the urge to change their ways. So it's hard. On the other hand, you don't need lots of words to speak English. Really, 1,000, 2,000 words, 3,000 are more than enough to express all of your ideas in a simple way. Everyone will understand you. If you do it fluently without mistakes and with more or less good sound, people will say definitely you know English very well. So you don't need all those 5,000, 10,000 words. You need them if you want to understand everything that they say at all times, in any contexts. Of course you need lots of words, but to express your ideas, little is enough. Very, very, very little is enough, and that creates a problem, because you'll be just pumping up their passive vocabulary with the words, and they'll be writing tests and checking their knowledge, progress tests and everything, and you'll see, they know the word, they know the phrase, but month after month after month, you may see that their speech doesn't change, though you spend a lot of time making sure that you practice the things that you're learning, not only learn the meaning and translation and do the boring exercises and everything. So I have mixed feelings, really, about teaching vocabulary. But what I always do when teaching vocabulary, what I think is my duty to do as a teacher, is provide my students with association, with something, with a picture, play words, with something that they can hold on to while trying to remember a meaning of a certain word. So give them this association to help them remember. So this is something that I have only recently started doing on a regular basis, And I feel this inner desire to always help them remember, because it's not difficult to help them understand the difference. By the way, sometimes you have to teach vocabulary as grammar. So you have to give certain rules or structures. And the most typical example of that is teaching the difference between say, speak, and tell. So in Russian, these three words can be one word, говорить, and you explain sometimes using the structure. So it's like say something, tell somebody something. So you have to go a little bit grammatical there. So yes, you do have to explain and help them feel the difference between the words. But your second and most important effort should be, or at least one of the most important efforts should be, to help them remember. And it is really up to you. I mean, I can give you some of my examples how I do that, but it's creative. It's your own creative style. So it's your imagination. If you have a colorful imagination, you won't have many problems thinking of ways to help your students remember. So for example, we have the word puddle. Yeah, and I help my students remember this word by saying, imagine a situation. You go to, you dress up, you go to a theater, you watch the performance, and you leave the theater and you understand that it's been raining, and you step off the curb, step off the step outside the theater, and without noticing it, you step into a puddle. And what do you say when you're wearing a dress or a suit? You look wonderful and you've had a good time, and then you step into a puddle suddenly. What do you say? You say puddle. Puddle, puddle. Well, sometimes you say it once, sometimes you say it twice, in Russian, of course. And usually students laugh at this point, and they understand that they associate the Russian bad word with the puddle on the ground, and it creates a picture for them, and it helps them. Sometimes it helps, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it takes more than one time, you know. I have lots of things like this, lots of stories like that. One more easy one, when we are learning irregular verbs and we want to remember the past simple of the word take, all I do is just knock. Knock, knock, and oh, tuk, right, absolutely. So, I mean, those of you who speak Russian understand me. So knock is tuk in Russian, and and they remember, or at least I try to help them remember. So I always play with words, try to explain. Sometimes even the word, using the words like explain. How do you explain the meaning of the word explain? Or no, rather, how do you help them remember the meaning of the word explain? Sometimes the pictures I create are not effective enough, of course. For example, explain is I explain I help them remember the word explain as explain, and I create a picture of explaining why this explain happened to be there and not there, things like that. Or the word flatter. When you flatter a person, you just say, wow, your flat is so wonderful, or in fact it's not. Oh, your flat is great, it's fantastic, I love your flat. Oh, stop flattering me, my flat is just ordinary. So playing with words all the time, just to help my students remember. That's what I do, and this is what I think everyone should do. Create these associations. Another thing that I do to help them remember is I put some of the words, in a provocative kind of phrases. In phrases that that evoke certain emotions, certain feelings. For example, if I want them to remember the word cell or kidney, well, I create a phrase sell a kidney. And we practice that in different contexts, and selling kidneys, and it's not pleasant to think of that. That's why it helps them to remember. Or I don't know, drive like mad, eat like a pig. Situations. I mean, phrases like that, collocations like that, that create certain pictures that are emotional. So it helps. It helps them to remember. Yeah. So by the way, one more example: the word afford. To be able to afford something. Yeah, I say, guys, I'm sorry, I don't have much money. I cannot buy a great car. I can only buy Zhiguli type of car. I cannot afford. So, and it helps them, it really does. So I mean, when I'm teaching vocabulary, there are two things that I've mentioned that I do. It's first explain the meaning, right, to make sure that they see the difference between the words. Yeah, tel kamu. I say tel kamu. Remember the word tel kamu. I remember the word say chivo, or remember the word speak achom. Speak, tell, say. Remember them as constructions, but these constructions, please remember, as sounds. And they see the difference, they feel the difference, at least to a certain extent. Then I give certain associations, certain... well, sometimes it can be just a sound, like quarrel with the neighbors, yeah, just a phrase I want them to remember, to know. We practice it, we answer questions, we do translations and then everything. And I may say, guys, please quarrel with the neighbors. Stop quarreling with the neighbors. Quarrel. And it helps. So if we play with it, if we laugh, if we have fun reading and working with this vocabulary, so it helps them. It creates the atmosphere, and they have positive emotions, and it helps. It helps. Of course, it absolutely works when you make your students do something. So, of course, it works best with vocabulary of body movement. So you say, clap your hands, they clap their hands, and they do it, and stamp your feet, so they stamp their feet, and it works best with that type of vocabulary, but it's not limited, definitely not. So you can design actions that can be associated with a certain phrase, with a certain word, and you can do the actions and say the phrase, say the dialect, whatever, the words or sentences, whatever it is that you're learning, and it will help them. It will help them really. So to remember again. So all of these things that I've mentioned, they are there to help them remember. One more thing that I do, especially when we have a phrase that I want them to remember, and this is something that I have already mentioned. There are 5 words in a phrase, it was the last thing on my mind. Yeah, it was the last thing on my mind. So I want them to remember this phrase, this construction, and I make it one sound, or maybe 2 sounds, but 2 parts of sound, but I break it not in the way where the words are separated from each other, not in the place where they are separated, but in a different place. So, was the last thing on my mind. Was the last thing on my mind. So we learn this phrase as just 2 sounds. Was the last thing, was the last thing, was the last thing on my mind, was the last thing, was the last thing, was the last thing on my mind, was the last thing. It just a sound. So it also helps them remember, really, because they learn this way. In this case, they learn it as just a combination of sounds, and they know what this whole combination means. So we also practice the usage of that, not only the drilling part, but I help them remember by providing them the sound that can make it easier for them to remember, because it's really hard to remember the picture. It was the last thing on my mind. Much harder than was the last thing on my mind. So especially if you say it a million times without looking at it, without trying to read it, but just imitating the sound, remembering the meaning, always. Every time you say something, you must understand what you're saying. It should never be just the sound itself without any meaning. So maybe I use some more techniques, but again, it's just I improvise and whatever I feel like doing, I will do it. But the goal is there to make sure they remember. Of course, remembering is impossible without recycling. So I have to say it many times, I have to explain it sometimes several times. We have to practice it. We have to combine different topics together, grammar, vocabulary, integrating. So, and it really helps them to remember. Now, of course, I mean, all those revision and recycling, yes, it should be there. Of course, I often teach vocabulary in texts. So, and when we, and I have shared with you how I deal with text. So, reading, repeating, translating again and again and again at home, and the sound, and everything. And it helps them greatly to remember the words, because they are associated with a certain context, with a picture, and the picture is provided by the story, by the text, by the article, whatever it is that we've been reading, and it works. So teaching vocabulary, I would just sum up teaching vocabulary in two things, in two phrases: establishing connection and association, certain links between what you're learning and what you already know, what you have already learned, linking these things, and repetition, recycling, running through your head the meaning, the phrase, the sound, the use of something over and over again, over a period of time. Association, repetition, association, repetition. If the association is strong, colorful, it works for this particular student, because of course different associations work for different people, so you have to stay sensitive to what works with your students, with a particular group, what doesn't. And repetition. And again, sometimes it takes one lesson to learn a certain topic, like certain 5 or 10 phrases. Sometimes it takes a couple of weeks. It depends on many factors. And what I have found is that very often it's just pointless to check their knowledge of certain vocabulary after they've done their homework if it was presented to only the lesson before. Because chances are they will know it. So if we have done a good practice in the class, and if they did their homework, then chances are, again, they will come, they will know. But learning vocabulary is about forgetting. And this forgetting is here in this repetition, revision kind of thing. So if you don't forget, and then remember again, and then again forget, and again remember, well, sometimes it's hard to really learn. So like I say, forgetting is extremely important, is an essential part, an integral part of learning. And this is something you can say, you can tell your students